Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Amsterdam Talk Season 4, Episode 1. Today, I bring you established author who has great programs. Is Renew, correct?
Renault.
Renault. How you
hmm
doing, Renault? How are you?
I'm doing good. It's just having just living the life out here.
Just living
Sunny
the life.
California.
And I figured, yeah, you're over in sunny California, so
Yeah,
it's dark over here on the East Coast.
yeah.
So we bring you in. So you want to talk about the seven core emotions, identified as affected by neuroscience.
Right. Yeah. I've spent my whole life just interested, fascinated with emotions. I started out as a kid raising. My parents come from farming backgrounds, so we had chickens, rabbits, and ducks, and parrot, all kinds of stuff. And I've always been fascinated with emotions. Got involved with animal behavior in my degree work, biology. Then I switched over to counseling. And I was a marriage family therapist for 20 years, working with anxiety disorders, and then switched over to teaching at a local college. But all the time, just keep following the research, what's been going on, and things that discover. And in this, since the last 20 years, research has shifted from what they call cognitive psychology, which is how you think, memory, vision, that type of stuff, and the study of emotions is actually taken on a much more in-depth study.
Hmm.
It's interesting how things research shifts from one little thing to another, and right now emotions are now starting to get really explored a lot more.
So why is it being explored a lot more than it was? I mean, it's getting explored a lot more today than it was back then.
It's just the way things go. When I first started, I was working with panic disorder, and in fact, if you go back and look at the research, the first thing that they started working with was schizophrenia, and then
Right.
they used to not have anything they could do to help people. And then in the 50s, they found a couple drugs, Malgrel and Stelazine, that actually made a difference. And that's when all of the biologists said, "Whoa, chemicals actually affect the brain." So that's when research started. Depression was the big thing. Then panic disorder became the big thing. It's kind of like when a new field gets discovered, then all the money goes there for a while, and then something else comes up, and that becomes the trend. Kind of like fashion, like jeans or dresses or whatever, whatever the current fashion is, that's where the money follows.
Right. So you say depression became a big thing, but it seems like it's back a big thing now.
Well, in terms of research, after schizophrenia, the next big thing that was researched was depression, and some of the antidepressants were discovered, the early ones. And then it's kind of like they discovered panic disorder. When I first started working, I went to the local library, and in 3 days, I read everything that had been researched on panic disorder. And then
Mm.
after about 2 years, that would have been impossible because like the money started hitting, and so all kinds of research started starting, and they started. They're looking for drugs. The drug companies is what funds a lot of the research because they're always looking for something they can sell as a pill and give to people. So, and then the different types of anxiety disorders, like speaking disorder and this and that started becoming important. OCD came out, was researched for a while, and it's just kind of the way research goes. It's like right now, if you want to do research on any kind of biology research, you got to put the word climate change in there, right? If I want to study the squirrels in Central Park, I won't get any money. But if I say I want to study the effects of climate change on the squirrels in Central Park, then I get some money. So it's all very political how a lot of this stuff works.
Okay. So okay, before we get into it, what are the seven cores?
Well, there's the two that everybody kind of is most familiar with, which is anger and fear. Those have to do with threat, of course. If the threat is manageable, then I tend to get angry and want to get rid of it. And if it's unmanageable, then I get afraid. I want to get away from it. And I use those words in a very broad sense because anger can range from just irritation, you're stepping on my toe, please get off, to rage. And anxiety can just range from just apprehension about I don't know, maybe a interview coming up, to panic because a grizzly bear is chasing me. And two of the ones that are kind of interesting, one is called seeking. And if you look at any, in fact, let me back up for just a moment.
Okay.
And these are something that are called affects. And when
Okay.
neuroscience is studying this stuff, they talk about affects. And affect is a wiring in your brain that makes you want to do something. It focuses your attention and your energy in some particular direction. So the simplest affects are what they call sensory affects. Things like heat, cold, pressure. If you've been sitting in that chair too long, you want to move around. If
Right.
you're cold, you want to get hot. And it's like all the other things you think about. The colder you are, the more you think about getting warm, but less you're thinking about everything else. And the next set, of course, are your homeostatic affects, which are that's just balance in your body. So like hunger and thirst, salt balance. And the hungrier I get, the more I want to eat something. I don't care about other stuff going on in my life.
Right.
And so emotions are kind of the next level up on top of that, and they get shaped a lot by your childhood experience because again, they get all kind of intertwined with the experiences you've had, what you've identified as positive and negative, and that shapes how they get expressed, and that all kind of becomes an automatic response pattern. So the simplest one is something that we call seeking. And you look at any baby, they're out there exploring their environment. They're chewing on
Right.
things. They're licking their way across the floor. They want to see what's out there. Is it safe? Is it not safe? And that's all mammals. That's true. In fact, when you're in a room with a bunch of people, somebody opens the door and walks in. First thing everybody does is they look over there to see who is that. And it's an unconscious compulsive action. You want to know what's out there. Is it safe? Is it not safe? Uh, and that's the basis, of course, of our curiosity as we get older too. Another one is something called play, the play circuit. Panksepp, the guy that did a lot of the initial research in this area, he had rats and he could turn off the thinking part of their brain. They still wanted to play. And
Right.
that's how mammals learn social limits. If you've ever worked with a little kid and you're playing with them, at some point they do too much. And so you say, hey, that's too much. The little gorilla's poking the old grayback, and pretty soon he turns around and says, enough of this, right? And
Mhm.
that's how you learn social limits, and that's how you also connect with people. And so as adults, we also like to play. It's kind of an inborn emotional drive for us. So those are two that are kind of interesting. We have, of course, the lust circuit that comes active during adolescence. We all know about lust and that whole
Right.
desire that gets it, helps to bind us with other people. Then there's actually another fear circuit besides danger. There's two of them. There's the one for danger, threat, and then there's one that in babies we call separation anxiety. And that's why we miss people that are close to us when they're away from us. There's that separation anxiety. Again, it gets filtered and changed as we get older. And then
Right.
there's a complementary caring circuit. And those two kind of are the basis of the love that we develop with people and friendships and that connection we have with others. So they're part of our basic wiring. And that kind of rounds out the seven basic ones, which then will develop into what they call the secondary emotions like pride and love and, you know, those types of things, jealousy.
Okay. So you have those seven cores, but then there becomes, I'm guessing they're like triggers. So
Well,
there are triggers.
exactly, exactly. Most of your day, your brain is doing so much stuff that you're totally unaware of. It's amazing how unaware we are of what's going on underneath everything. You're walking down the street, your brain is just making associations with are there what's safe, what's okay. If it notices something, like if you're driving a car, a truck goes by, immediately you become aware of it, even though you've been
Right.
listening to the radio. So as you grow up, you get thousands and thousands of associations get made. And whenever there's an association that is particularly important, either in the good or a bad way, there's an emotional tag, if you will, gets associated with it. And
Okay.
then that's how the brain actually sorts information. It uses emotions as a way to sort what's important and what's not important. And so now, when those things that are important, either good or bad, enter your environment or you become aware of them, even on an unconscious level, it pops up into your conscious mind and you become consciously aware of it. Um, and of course, the problem is sometimes things that are safe get identified as dangerous. If you
Right.
grew up in a difficult childhood background, maybe you got well, a good example would be a lady I worked with whose supervisor uh, looked and sounded a lot like an abusive parent. And so whenever she got around him, she just got all out of anxiety because he would trigger those associations with danger, right? And
Mhm.
so she had to learn how to literally desensitize to it. Uh,
Right.
and you can actually desensitize to anything if you go about it the right way. And so the way
Oh,
what we used with her was something that I call what's happening, what's real. Before she would go to meet with him or be around him, she would say to herself, what's happening is he feels and looks like my parent. What's
right.
true and what's real is he's not. He's just my supervisor. We're just going to talk about the weekly schedule or some other kind of business related stuff. I'm not going to get yelled at. I'm not going to get beat up. He's just my supervisor. And over time, she actually desensitized him, where they became friends.
Okay, but but speaking outside of the work, desensitization can actually happen basically based how you grow up. And
Exactly. You
certain things
desensitize
around
all
you
the
happen, and you're just used to it.
Yeah, I mean, you go to your first job and you're kind of anxious. Oh, how am I going to do? Is it? But after a while, it's just a job. So you desensitize all that stuff. So it's a part of the natural process that we go through all the time. Driving, a good example. When you first start driving, you're looking at everything, and after a while, you're just sitting there, kind of listening to the radio or talking to somebody or thinking about what you're going to watch on TV, and not paying a lot of attention because now it's all being done at an unconscious level, and you're desensitized to it.
Okay, so with these triggers, are they well, they are emotional. With these emotional triggers, is there anything physical that we could see that be like this person may be going through this? It's like physical symptoms.
Well, certainly, anxiety is the big one. Oftentimes, triggers will cause a person to become very anxious, sometimes frightened, sometimes even have panic attacks. And sometimes they're not even aware of what's causing it. Sometimes they are. Uh, and so that's certainly, if you're sensitive to what anxiety signs are in a person, you'll notice it. And again, that's a whole nother thing. When I worked with panic disorder, as a group, those people had very reactive bodies. And if you think about everything that human beings have, exist over kind of what they call the normal curve. There are tall people, there are short people, there's average heights. Some people have very reactive bodies and sensitive nervous systems, and other people don't. You got to wrap them upside the head to get them to notice something. And
Right.
this group of people had very reactive bodies. So I used to tell them it's kind of like a house where the wiring's not quite up to code. And
Hmm.
so when you got stuff going on, you have these anxiety symptoms and stuff coming up. So yeah, so I can usually pick it out when I see somebody doing that, but most people don't, unless they have major anxiety symptoms going on.
Okay, so because on one of your articles you said you can experience chest pain, dizziness,
Yeah.
nausea, rapid heart rate, shaking,
Oh
sweating,
yeah. Yeah.
something.
Well, and the easiest way to understand a panic attack is everybody's had a panic attack, but most of the time we haven't identified it like that.
Right.
I had one once. I remember I was in my car driving, and I was getting ready to pull out, and this car T-boned me, right?
Hmm.
And not excuse me, he didn't T-bone me. He T-boned the car that was just next to me, and he started rolling towards me, and so I slammed on the gas, got out of the way, and as I'm sitting there, your foot's kind of shaking on the gas pedal. You're kind of wondering, what's going on here.
Right.
But I knew what was happening. I almost got creamed by this car. And so I just, after a few minutes, I calmed down and moved on. Police, fire people, emergency personnel, they oftentimes will experience that adrenaline rush, which is really all a panic attack is. It's a big adrenaline rush. But in the case of people who have, quote, panic attacks, they don't make the association for what's triggering it. And so it seems to just be coming out of the blue to them.
Okay. So it's basically it's coming out the blue, but it's subconsciously been there already.
There's a trigger, and oftentimes when I talk to people about their initial panic attack, it's a stress reaction. I'll
Right.
be talking to somebody. I'll say, "So tell me what's going on when you had your first panic attack." Well, I was working full time, going to school. I was taking care of my dad who was sick. My fiance decided I didn't want to get married. I don't understand, why that I reacted like that. And so when you look at it, you say, "Hey, wait a minute, I can figure this one out. That was just a stress reaction. You were doing way too much, and your body was just saying, no way, I've had enough here." But then what happens, of course, is they do a couple things. They start worrying about it, right? What we call the negative anticipation. Uh, Gee, what if it happens again? What if there's something physically wrong with me? What if I can't control it? What if people see me doing it? And so that also causes them to start watching their body and looking for it. And whenever they notice anything any kind of anxiety that might be a panic attack, then of course they start the negative self-talk. Oh my gosh, here it comes. I got what's happening. And of course that now triggers the old fight or flight mechanism, and they start self-generating these panic attacks. And that's where it takes on a life of its own. Is it's a response to their it becomes a conditioned response to their own negative self-talk and reaction to situations. And
So
it can become associated with specific stuff too, like going to a store or standing in a line, any place where they feel like they're trapped and they can't get out.
Okay, so if you feel trapped, you can't get out, and you just go into this fight or flight.
Right, right.
So even though you're saying it's anxiety, would you also, because you said in the line of the store, would that correlate with like patience?
No, it's just simply it has to do with being trapped. I like an interesting one. Sometimes they can't do a left-hand turn because now I'm trapped in the turn lane, right? And what
Right.
if I have a panic attack? So the need is I need to be able to escape if this thing comes up. I don't want to be any place where I'm going to have a panic attack and I can't get to safety. And that can take very individualized forms depending upon the person and how they view their what's safe and what's not safe.
Okay. So you have on one of your articles, and it's coming up. So
Hmm.
we're gonna pass Halloween. We're going straight to Thanksgiving. You have something called the holiday anxiety,
Oh yeah, yeah,
unrealistic
yeah, yeah.
expectation. Can you explain that to us about what you call holiday anxiety?
Yeah, it's when I had clients, right towards Thanksgiving, they would start to get anxious and have some symptoms coming, escalating, and then afterwards it would calm down a little bit. Then as Christmas would come, it would escalate some more. And I'd tell them, you're going to be feeling good around January 15th. And January, middle January would come, and they'd start calming back down again. They said, "Man, you're some kind of a prophet, a wizard." And really, all it is what we call a conditioned response.
Okay.
Uh, it's if you think about Pavlov's dogs, you ring the bell, you give them some food, you ring the bell, and pretty soon ringing the bell, they'll start to salivate, right?
Right.
If you grow up in a crazy family, holiday, Thanksgiving and Christmas is usually when it gets crazier and things escalate. Now,
Right.
what's going on at that time of the year that doesn't go on any other place it used to be? It used to be you'd have Christmas music, Christmas decorations, and so that becomes associated at an unconscious level with danger. And
Right.
so those things start to appear in the environment at an unconscious level. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for things to escalate and more danger to approach. And so that starts to trigger the anxiety. And that's all it is a simple association. It'll be interesting to see what happens since we now start doing Christmas decorations. In fact, I saw stuff up just yesterday. And here it is. Aren't even to Halloween, and I'm seeing Santa Claus out there. Uh, because that used to be just associated with December. And so there was a very clear association with those decorations and music and programs and
Right.
danger.
Well, you look at it now as basically, like you said, it's not the same anymore. I mean, Christmas has become just basically a business. I mean,
Hmm.
when you even take in consideration of Black Friday, like stores at least had the decency not to sell on Thursday for Thanksgiving. Now you have people rushing out of their homes in the middle of dinner to go get a TV from Walmart or Target.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But still, the only time you hear Christmas carols and see the Christmas trees and Santa Claus and all that stuff, it still seems to be the end of the year. So for a lot of people, that still seems to be a trigger for them that, things are going to get crazy again. And what they have to do is go through basically a desensitization process and remind themselves that what's happening is all the stuff around me is reminding me of my home that I grew up in. I'm not there anymore. I'm safe. This is a different situation. And along with that, a lot of times they need to come up with new traditions for themselves, decide how can I make this a good time for me? What are some new things I can do? If they have to be around relatives that get drunk or whatever, uh, plan to do it maybe in the morning before they start drinking. Or if you got to go out of town, get a hotel room so you can escape when things start getting crazy. Don't plan to sit there and be with them all the time. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So why do you think? I mean, we know these holidays are coming. As far as
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and Christmas, we know when family are really around each other. Why do people decide if they know this is getting ready to happen? They put so much expectation into it, as far as like making unrealistic expectations, being they're trying
Yeah.
to accommodate every single person that's coming when you know you can't.
Well, if you enjoy being anxious and uptight, then you do that. If you're wise, you learn that maybe I don't have to buy into all that stuff. Maybe I can choose what I want to do, and I can choose wisely. I can shop early, for example. I can avoid those last minute rushes. I can be around people and do things that I enjoy,
Right.
rather than doing a bunch of stuff I don't have to do. If there's an office party or something, work get together, uh, I can arrive late and leave early. At least as I've showed up, right? If I don't enjoy it, right? So I can start to
Right.
make plans, or how can I change my behavior where I don't necessarily have to do all these things that, you know, maybe I'm thinking society is saying I should or have to do. I don't have to do them.
Well, but that's the thing, the machine now is social media. So you feel as though what you're seeing on social media, you're being moved by that machine, that you have to do these things when you really don't have to.
A lot of people are. In fact, there's a term called fear of missing out that a lot of younger people experience because they see all of this wonderful stuff going on. Everybody's living a better life than I'm living, and there's a lot of anxiety and anger that is being generated because of it. Yeah, you need to be a wise consumer of social media. I mean, I enjoy aspects of it. When my daughter was studying over in England, we would get together with her on a Zoom meeting every Sunday, and that was great. But to sit there hours and hours, with your head and all that stuff, yeah, that's not healthy. The other thing that's not healthy is a lot of the news streaming that goes on. With anxiety clients, the first thing I would tell them to do is quit watching the evening news. Uh, Nowadays, I would say, go online for 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour at the most, go to some news sites, consume whatever you want to consume, and then get on with your day. Move on. Don't keep your head stuck into this constant, everything is a crisis. Everything, the world's falling apart. Everything is terrible. Oh my gosh, the sky is falling. There's only so much you can do, right?
Right.
So get your head out of it. In fact, there was an interesting study in Europe, and they took their 18 to mid 20s and they had them reduce their social media, the time they spent, by 1 hour a day. And they
Okay.
did that for 2 weeks. And by all the measures, they were much happier afterwards. In fact, that maintained for actually several months because instead of doing social media, they were doing things that were more healthy for themselves.
Right. So, so they became healthy with themselves. So would you say over in Europe is Americans behind the curve on that?
Well, this was just a study, right, where they took a group of people. That I think around the world, wherever there's industrialized communities, they're facing the same types of problems. We're like a little kid with a new toy, and we're
Right.
just ODing on it, and it's going to take some time to learn to be wise with it. Although I am discouraged when I go into a restaurant and I see both parents on their phone and the kids on their device, and nobody's talking to each other. when
So,
when you look at the what is called the science of happiness, the positive psychology, the research they've been doing over the last 20 years, the biggest thing for happiness for people is relationship, having some positive relationships where you can be transparent, you can be yourself, you don't have to be afraid of being criticized and stuff. And if you've got people like that in your life, then you do much better in terms of your mental health. And we
right.
used to have a lot of people like that. We used to have the village, we used to have the block, we used to have extended families. Nowadays, people are very isolated, and sometimes they go their entire day without meaningful contact, except for their 500 Facebook friends, right? Which, that's not really what we call meaningful contact with people.
Yeah, and that can't be healthy right there. If that's your
No,
only a means
no.
of communication.
Because going back to those circuits, the majority of those circuits have to do with connection. When you talk about the caring circuit, the separation anxiety circuit, the play circuit, all that stuff, it all has to do with connecting with other people, and it's a very important part of human beings. And if you don't have healthy connection, you start substituting, which our society does. We substitute excitement for a lot of that stuff. We substitute power, we substitute money, we substitute experiences for a relationship. And those things are good and important, and they're nice and to have, but you still need that connection with people, which so many people don't have.
Right. So what is this? What is like if you're with someone and and you're saying, "Hey, I want to spend time," and you're having that connection, but at the whole time while you're giving them your attention, they're just playing in your phone. They're playing in their phone or dealing with their phone the whole time back on the social media.
Well, they may not have the capacity for the type of connection you want. Not everybody is capable of having a healthy relationship. And that's something that that's just reality. Not everybody has the wiring and the experiences. They have things from their childhood sometimes that prevent them from being able to connect with others at the level you want to. So you need to be wise with that. And let me digress for just a moment. This is very unpopular, what I'm going to say now, but one of the things that I really recommend for singles is do not get into sexual relationships right away,
Okay.
because you need to have some time to evaluate, is this person capable of the type of intimacy and relationship I want from them. And the trouble is once you start getting sexually intimate, then the frontal parts of your brain, the thinking part, cuts off, and the emotional stuff starts getting more activated. More so with women than men, but with both sexes. When you look at the MRIs of women who are in just a brand new relationship, the emotional centers are all lit up, and the frontal lobes are kind of quiet. And that's why we say, you're looking at people through rose-colored glasses, and then 6 months
Right.
down the line, you look at them, and you say, who is this person? This is not who I thought they were, right? And it used to be people would take time, and so they would evaluate, is this person capable of the type of relationship that I want long term? And we don't do that nowadays, and which is why, again, you see so many, broken relationships and so much disharmony and other stuff going on with people.
Right. Because it was massive divorce numbers when COVID first hit because people didn't know who they were with. You was trapped in a
Yep,
house with a person you
yep,
didn't know.
yep. You find that when kids leave the house a lot of times too. If the couple has spent all their time in work and raising the couples and have not invested in their relationship, okay, the kids are now of age. They leave the house. They look at each other and, okay, who are you?
Right. Because most American families, basically their relationship is just a pass by. I'm seeing you when I get home from work. I'm seeing you basically when we go to sleep. That's really what it is.
For a lot, I wouldn't say all, but certainly there's a big, big chunk of families that's true. And again, I come from a generation, and you tend to surround yourself with people that have a similar background to you. And
Right.
so all my friends have been married a long time. We've all kind of had traditional families and stuff. Uh, and when I work with singles who come from difficult backgrounds, all of their friends come from difficult backgrounds, and so
Right.
it's like it's that self-fulfilling prophecy of looking at everybody else and saying it's or what they call the echo chamber, right? Everything is the same as what I'm seeing here.
Oh,
In fact, when I work with people from difficult backgrounds, one of the things I usually say is you need to identify one or two people from healthy backgrounds and hang around them,
right.
because you do not get better reading a book or talking to somebody for an hour once a week. We are experiential beings. In fact, getting back to those emotions, I was mentioning how emotions are the way the brain indexes information.
Hmm.
That's why experiential learning is more important than book learning. I can read everything there is about driving a car, and I can
Right.
have a good understanding of all the things you need to do to drive a car. But
Right.
until I get behind the wheel and, oh my gosh, that didn't work. Hey, this feels pretty good. Now my brain can sort that information and make it an automatic process. So
Well,
experience, and same thing with intimacy. If you've not had people in your life where you've been able to have positive relationships, the way you understand what that's all about is by finding somebody who has the capacity for that and interacting with them. And you know what the biggest complaint is when people start hanging around somebody who's got a healthy background?
what's that?
This
They too
person is so
positive.
this person is so boring. There's absolutely no drama in this person's life. They're
And
just smooth and steady, because because again, the drama distracts from the need to have closeness, right? There's that need there that's not being met, and so what's getting shoved in there is excitement, or just intensity, I should say.
right. And I've talked about this probably maybe 2, 3 weeks ago. Some people just need chaos for their world to go.
Well, and it's because they don't know how to meet those needs other ways, otherwise. And so what they've learned, it's like a little kid. If you've got a little kid and you're ignoring them, they're going to get a piece of you either in a positive way or in a negative way. And so,
Right.
like when we do parent classes, you talked about you need to give your kids special time. You need to give them some attention, and then they won't need to pull it out of you by negative behaviors, because they're
Right.
going to get a chunk of you one way or the other. And so some people have grown up that that's the only way they know to get
You know,
to
to get
connect with
attention.
others is through that negative attention, that chaos.
Right. So I know we got a little bit time left, but just I see that you're the author of three books, Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic, Taking Charge and Conquering Fear,
Mm,
Overcoming Anxiety from Short-Term to Long-Term Fixes. I mean, short-term fixes to long-term recovery, and Anger, Taming the Beast.
right. And the new one,
And the new one. What's the
which
new one?
it's a why you feel the way you do. So it's
Why you
all
feel?
about these emotions we're talking about.
Oh, all these on Amazon? Any
Yeah,
platform?
they're on Amazon. They're ebook, they're audiobook, print book.
So, what is something that's a short-term fix for overcoming anxiety that someone may need to hear?
Wow. Uh, well, maybe let me talk about worry, right? What we call the negative anticipation or the what if thinking that people do. When people who are, they worry a lot and they get really anxious about things coming up, one of the things they do is something that we call emotional reasoning. So,
Right.
to use an extreme example, people with a panic disorder, one of the things they would worry about is passing out because they would hyperventilate sometimes. And so I'd say, so tell me, what are the chances when you go to the store that you might pass out? And they would say, oh, maybe 50%. And so then I would ask them, so how many times have you passed out? Well, I've never passed out in my
Right.
life. So based on reality, the odds were low, but based on their emotional feeling, the odds were high. And so one of the things that people often do is they overestimate how likely something is to occur, especially with all the news media stuff that goes on around. So base your estimation on reality, your past experience and experience of other people that you know. Second thing is they will overestimate the awfulness of it. So again, with the passing out, how bad would it be if you pass out in the store, given no real harm is going to be to you? But their first response would be on a scale of 1 to 10 is probably a 15. Okay, so let's compare that to getting your arm cut off or your kid getting killed or having a wasting disease. Okay, now it becomes a 1 or 2, right? It's very low on the scale. So that's the second thing that emotional reasoning does is it overestimates how awful, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. It's going to be the worst thing in the world. So being more realistic as to those things are important. And then getting to the third step, which is what can I do about it to prevent it? And how could I manage it if it were to happen?
Right.
And again, those two steps people who are emotional reasoners never get to because they're stuck in that circular question or circular thinking about, oh my gosh, it's going to happen, it's going to be awful. But then you look at people who deal with adversity well, they automatically go through those steps. They do a realistic estimation. Then they say, well, I could do this, it'll probably prevent it. And if it were to happen, these are some things I could do to cope with it. And you
Right.
can apply that to anything from not doing well on a job interview to failing a test at school or whatever. And sometimes bad things do happen, but most of the time they're manageable. There's most of the adversity we face in life is manageable.
All right. So that's about it for today. That's about it. I thank you
Mhm.
for coming at all times. So where can they find you and reach you at if they wanted to talk more to you or see some more of your works?
Easiest way is through my website, ywemotions.com. So yemotions.com has uh, links to my books, to the YouTube channel where I have a lot of stuff, a few freebies up there. So yemotions.com.
All right. Well, thank you for sitting down and chatting it up on Amsterdam Talk with us. And anytime you want to come back and let us know about overcoming anxieties and things like that, you're always welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so next week, y'all, we're gonna see you on Wednesday, but at a brand new time, 7 p.m. We moving up earlier. It's getting colder and later, so we're moving up earlier next week. So next week, I don't even have my calendar in front of me, but next week we have an influencer coming through, and they want to talk about speaking in public. Anxieties you feel about speaking in public.
Hmm.
So that's it. See you next week, next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Thank you for Dr. Renault for coming. Thank you. See you
Hey,
next week.